What's up, guys, and welcome to the 2020 F900R. We're going to do kind of initial impressions, MC Commute, ride home video. I've been waiting to kind of get my hands on an F900R for a little bit. I do really like this thing, and before you tell me that the wheels are ugly, I really like the way the silver wheels look, so whatever, argue in the comments. But yeah, this is the 2020 F900R, completely new redesigned bike for 2020 from BMW, very lightly based off of the F850 GS engine. I think this one obviously is a little bit more capacity versus the 850, and it's a naked. It's a pretty basic bike as far as what it's supposed to be able to do. You know, commute right around town. If you've got the stones for it, you can go on a road trip if you want. It comes with, you know, luggage racks, or at least this version does. And like everything else that we've learned to love and appreciate from BMW, it's loaded with gadgets, so it's keyless ride. Nice big color TFT screen. Has all the connectivity, cruise control, all that good stuff. LED headlight, quick shifter, auto blipper, known as the Gear Shift Assist Pro, different ride modes, heated grips. This one doesn't have dynamic ESA, so it doesn't have the electronic suspension. You can tell because it's got black forks. Normally those will have gold forks, those bikes, but that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really bother me. Most bikes don't have that in the market anyway, and not for nothing. I mean, for the price point, right around 12 and change, I want to say, for this one, it's a lot of bikes. So let's take it out. Let's see what we think. Well, let's see what I think, and you can either agree or disagree, but yeah, let's go. Alright, so this is quite different than the bike I rode in this morning, which is my 1250 GS HP. Almost the polar opposite. Non-adventure bike, not a touring bike, unless you make it. I always think every bike's a little bit capable of touring, considering I did a pretty decent tour on my S1000RR a couple years back, so it is what you make it. All right, now, man, this thing feels small. I haven't run a bike this small in a while. Oh, nice sound. Okay, ooh, it is warm today. Let's open up some vents. Okay. Nice sound. TFT, beautiful as ever. You know what? I'm not even listening to music, so it's boogie. Okay. Okay. Oh man, the suspension's pretty stiff. But I guess, you know, when you don't opt for the DESA, the dynamic ESA, the electronically damped and adjustable suspension, you're gonna get that. Kind of supposed to be middle of the road. Okay, let's see how we do. Man, I feel like I am on no bike at all. I guess it's a good thing, depending on what you like to ride. It does have a quick shifter, but I always kind of like to get a feel for just how the transmission feels. Upshifting, downshifting. Normally, you know, with the clutch rev matching yourself, kind of the engine braking does. This bike has dynamic engine braking, which pretty much will alter the way the bike engine brakes according to wheel speed, according to deceleration, kind of what you're doing. Oh, it's a nice Jag. Which way are we going? Let's follow the Jag. SVR. You know, I'm so used to the TFT. That's a nice Jag. I'm so used to the TFT at this point that it's like I really wouldn't want to ride a bike without it. It gives you so much information, you know, just immediately. Obviously, all bikes are going to have a rev indicator, mile per hour gauge, gear shift. Well, most bikes don't have a gear shift, but you know, you can pop it down, my vehicle, you know, all that good stuff. Or it's going to give you an active lean angle gauge. It's going to give you a little more pronounced tachometer. So let's see what happens right in this one. All right, let's see how the last bike I rode, the S1000XR, that was That quick shifter is just awesome. That quick shifter is flawless in my eyes. So let's see how this one is. Again, new bike. They've learned a lot about the Gear Shift Assist Pro. It's on almost every BMW at this point, as long as you equip it or option it out. So let's see how it feels. 12 degrees, 11 degrees lean angle. I haven't even been anywhere. Feels pretty good. I think the XR is definitely a little crisper. This bike's got some get up and go. We'll see how that equates on the highway when I need to overtake somebody or something. It feels really weird, not gonna lie. It feels really weird being on a bike so small compared to what I rode in, like I said, my GS, but let's see. Feels nice and responsive. Motor and steering. Close this so you guys can hear me better. Motor and steering feels very responsive. Steering's very light. Most newer BMWs are to begin with. Not really, you don't really have to ask too much of it to get the bike to lean over, get the bike to turn, just a little bit of counter steering, and you'll get the desired effect. Auto blipping on the downshift is very nice. I feel myself keep going for the auto hold, which I really like on my bike, but it's not really the end of the world. Okay, so this also kind of shares the way that the RR sport screen works. You get two versions of the sport screen. This one's a little bit more focused on lap times. You absolutely could take this bike to the track. You could take most bikes at the track at this point, to be honest. I was invited to a track day not too long ago, and the guy's like, "Oh, come on, I can have a bike." He's like, "Bring your GS." I thought about it for a second, but no, not really what I got it for. This thing's got a nice noise. Throttle and clutch response are really nice. Brakes, I mean, it's really hard to say anything bad about BMW's brakes. This bike has the Brembos, which BMW's been using for a while. Most bikes are using as standard. I know a lot of people are having some gripes with BMW moving manufacturers to the Hayes brakes now. I have the Hayes brakes on my R1250 GS. But I really sometimes forget how good the brakes are on these bikes until, for instance, maybe I ride a trade-in, or, you know, I ride a G310. I had to move one today, and I was like, man, this thing's got no brakes on a lot of suspension travel. You know, you grab a whole lot of brake on like a G310, and the front just dives. But, you know, that's also a much lower price point bike, geared at beginners and learning, so you really can't ask too much of a bike like that. The brakes feel good. I've installed it so far. Clutch is very predictable. Seating position is nice. Feel very centered on the bike, very upright, which I'm used to, which is no big deal, but it definitely feels comfortable. Seat's a little stiff, but you know what? The bike has how many miles on it? 15 miles at best, so not a lot of stuff has broken in on this machine. I do like the firing order and the way that they set up this parallel twin. It does have a nice noise for stock, and I think with the right exhaust you probably get some really nice tones out of it. I know a lot of stuff isn't available for the bike. I think I looked up that SC Project has an exhaust available on this bike, and SC Project makes some really nice stuff. So just making my way downtown. We'll cross down, I guess. No ways today, so let's just see if we remember how to go home. Hopefully traffic isn't too annoying. Traffic's been picking up ever since the city kind of partially reopened, so that's a pain, but it is what it is. I'm in the wrong lane, so is that guy. You know, the suspension is stiffer than I thought it was going to be, which I don't mind. Because in my eyes, through some tuning, messing around, now this suspension isn't initially adjustable. I'm talking more if you either go with an aftermarket drop-in kit, or perhaps mess with the fluid in the actual cartridges. But I'd rather a bike be too stiff, in my opinion. It's easier to work with than a bike be too soft in the suspension, because then you're going to get a lot of travel, you're going to get a lot of movement, you know, maybe not necessarily when you want it. It might soak up the bumps a little bit better, but you know, you go for an aggressive maneuver, whether it's on purpose or not. You go for some emergency braking, not really like that, but you know, some braking that you weren't expecting, and you can get a lot of dive from the bike, and you know, in certain ways you can either overload a front tire, wash out the front when there's not as much preciseness in the front. So I don't mind it being stiff. Plus, you know, most of my riding experience is on sport bikes, and all of those were stiff, especially my S1000RR with the suspension that I had put in it anyway. So, you know, plus what do you do in a car? First thing you do is you hop in. If you have the ability, you'll put it in sport mode, which is going to tighten everything up anyway. So deal with it. If you want it softer, look for a different bike. That is just my initial impression on the suspension. It is quite stiff, not in a bad way. Seating position and reach, like I said, really feels good. Quick shifter is nice. I like in these newer bikes, the first bikes, or the first couple bikes that I owned with quick shifters, my S1000RR only had it on the upshifts. You know, it was I want to say all or nothing. You know, like it was wide open throttle. It was going to kind of give you the same style of upshift every time, and it could be, you know, quite unnerving because you kind of felt like you were on it all the time. This is an S1000RR, so you kind of were. But what I've noticed out of these new bikes and the new BMWs, especially in my bike, the GS, and the S1000XR that I recently rode, it's very progressive, especially now that most of our bikes, if not all of our bikes, minus the R9Ts, are fly-by-wire, throttle controlled by wire, not by cables. The computer is going to be able to kind of measure how quickly you're accelerating, not just by engine speed, you know, by throttle input as well, especially with me being in road mode. And the quick shifter seems to adapt. The quick shifter will be nice and lazy. Like right now I'm going to upshift to third, no bucking, nothing crazy. But when you're on it, when you really are hammering the throttle and you want those snappy gear shifts, you get those. It seems like the bike seems to respond to your throttle input, obviously whichever ride mode you're in, and will act accordingly, which is nice because there's some adaptability. I remember the second gen S1000RR, it felt nice, but you know, it wasn't as crisp as I want it to be, and I think they perfected it on the newer bikes, especially the newer S1000RR as well. Traffic slowing down a little bit, so just gonna, yeah, that was a nice auto blip. There wasn't really much revs to give it because I'm going, what, 20 miles an hour, but that was nice and smooth. I'm 5'9". My knees are a little high for my liking on this bike, but you know, we did that quick little walk around in the beginning, and you can see how small and short of a bike it is. So where your legs really gonna go? Plus, it is a sport bike, or you know, in that sport category, sport naked, mid-range sport naked, whatever you want to call it. So you're going to get the type of seating position, or at least leg position, where your rear sets are fairly high. I do feel that. I'm on the balls of my feet pretty much like I always am on any bike. My knees, they're high, but you know, at this point, like I said, 5'9", 33, 34 inch inseam, not unbearable. It's kind of something you have to live with on most bikes. All bikes don't fit everybody, so that's why there's a great aftermarket for BMW. BMW produces a lot of aftermarket parts, or rather accessories, I want to say, so that you can really kind of fine-tune how you want the ride to be. And if you want to get some adjustable rear sets, drop them down. If you want to get some adjustable rear sets and you're shorter than I am and raise it up, you can totally do that. So the adjustability is there. Don't know why I'm still in the sports screen, even though I'm commuting, but look at this thing. Clap, 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 clap. Harley Davidson, everybody. Let's get back to the normal screen, the pure screen as they call it. My tire pressure's okay. Tire pressures are good. You know, those things make a lot of noise and they don't go anywhere. I bet I could definitely take that bike. I don't even know what it is. I really know nothing about Harleys. Oh, that is a very green BMW. And it's just, oh man, he's got those weird handlebars. It's like, how do you ride those things? It just seems like the handlebars do nothing. So far, bike feels good. I do like the amount of engine braking it does have at slow speed. Sometimes I don't like when you get to a bigger motor, like a 900, 750s, 850s, 1000s for sure, and then above it, you get a lot of engine braking, and it seems to slow you down a lot when you roll off the throttle, and that can be really unnerving. and something else that can upset the suspension, but BMW does build in this dynamic braking control. You can hear my voice, it's the suspension is stiff, but with that dynamic braking control, it's kind of messing with it, fine-tuning the engine braking. So it is what it is. Oh, it just smells so much gas coming out of that thing. Oof, it's making me nauseous. Maybe that's why Harley guys always wear open face helmets, because they just dump so much fuel into their engines that you're gonna get lightheaded. You need all the fresh air. I don't know. Sounds pretty good. I like it. Red line's up at 9,000 RPM. More than enough oomph, I'd say. Red light, green light. Oh man, yeah, see, like I just said, you know, when you're sharp and aggressive on the throttle, the quick shifter will respond. It's not a tailored, or rather it is a tailored quick shifter. Here we go. Alright guys. Oh, none of you guys can hear me. I'm just gonna shut up while he's around. So as with all my commute videos, you'll see my initial impressions. I'll ride at home. It's right around 50 miles for me to get from the city to my house. And then, you know, I'll sleep on it. I'll think about it. I might dream about the bike overnight. And then we'll get some more initial impressions. How does the bike feel day 2? Like I say in some of my videos, all the bikes feel good, especially initially. And depending on what you've come from, you know, I had a guy trade in a Honda NC700 the other day, and he upgraded to a R1250 GS. That bike, of course, is going to feel amazing. It's 10 times better than the Honda, in my opinion. So, you know, what's not to like? But then you're going to, you know, you live with the bike for a little bit. You live with the bike for a couple days, couple of weeks, couple months, and you might find some things you either want to mess with or you aren't so crazy about that you thought were really, really good the first time you rode it home. So what I like to do is spend, you know, a couple nights on the bike if I can, at least one night overnight, and get my impressions, you know, see how it feels. I also haven't ridden a bike in a while that didn't have any wind coverage, which clearly this thing doesn't. And the only thing that is shaping the wind is the TFT, which a lot of manufacturers produce naked bikes, so that's not abnormal. That is a style of bike. But my R1250 GS obviously has so much more wind coverage that we'll really see how this bike acts dynamically in the wind, with the speed, with maybe wind gusts, whatever I kind of come across. So far, obviously, at 22 miles an hour, the bike feels fine. The wind's not really going to do anything at this speed, but let's see what happens when we pick up the pace. I like this suspension. This suspension feels good. So far, if you're thinking about this bike for commuting and short rides and XYZ, things of that nature, bike feels solid for it. Real nimble, power's great, down low anyway. I think you could definitely daily this bike, but we'll see how it is when we get on the highway. Some guys don't like riding, you know, super big bikes if they just have to commute. You know, this might be right in the wheelhouse of what you're looking for, comparing it to maybe like a Z900, something like that. Plus, you know, with all the tech and gadgets and gizmos, it's kind of cool. How much lean angle did I just put in there? Right side lean angle, 24 degrees so far, left only 11. Quick shifter is nice. Now, as always with most modern BMWs, most BMWs for a while anyway, this one does have linked brakes. So I mean, on most bikes that I've had, I think on most bikes in general, people aren't using the rear brake that often, unless your bike's big and heavy and the front brakes aren't so good. But like I said, this has a nice tight feel for the brakes. You get a very good response almost immediately, and I don't feel a lot of body movement, a lot of rolling forward on the bike when there's heavy braking. So I don't really find use of the rear brake that necessary, but to each their own. I just used it and the rear brake is strong. Rear brake is strong. I like that. It's better than it is on my GS. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's warm today. 80 degrees the dash says. Can you see that? 80 degrees. Most bikes aren't also coming with an ambient air temp sensor, which is pretty cool. Back in the day on a motorcycle, if you wanted to know what the temperature was, you just lift your visor to take a guess. If it's raining or if your face gets wet, it's probably raining. If you start sweating, it's probably hot. Just going back to the suspension, if you guys don't exactly know what DESA or dynamic ESA does, it basically adjusts the dampening on the motorcycle electronically. So if you are, let's say, on a nice flat road and you want to tighten up the suspension, or let's say you're on your favorite back road and you just want some extra response from the bike, put it in dynamic mode. It will tighten up the suspension, it will make it a little bit stiffer, and you'll really get more feedback from the suspension. You'll get more feedback from the bikes, which is a good thing. And then if you're riding around New York City streets, if you're on a road that has not been paved in a while, New York, you will want to put it in road mode, and it'll soak up a lot more of those bumps. It'll make the suspension a lot more compliant. And a lot of times I ride my bike in road mode, but on my favorite roads, on the roads that are freshly paved, on the roads that I know like the back of my hand, I put it in dynamic. It just gives you a little bit more feedback, makes the bike feel tighter, especially on some of our bigger bikes like the GS. It's not a bad thing having suspension adjustability. Like the way this thing sounds. Go back to the sport mode. 28 degrees, nice. 5,000 RPM. Roll off the throttle. This Jeep go by. Okay, you're definitely a cop. Oh, or not. Oh, you look like one. Thanks for giving me some room, lady. It's nice to report there's no buzz in the handlebar, at least at 4,000 RPM, 50 miles an hour. Most of the bars BMW makes, I'm not sure about other brands, but most of the bars BMW makes are aluminum. So aluminum transfers vibrations fairly well. And this is a parallel twin with a funky firing order, so sometimes you can expect engines and setups like that to give you a decent amount of vibration in the bar. Nothing crazy in this, nothing that would make my hands go numb, but like I said, I've only been on the bike for however many miles, so let's see. We shall see. Bike's nimble though, feels real nice around town. So far feels real nice on the highway, predictable. And kind of, this might be weird to say, but you can kind of assume how much lean angle you have, how much grip you have, how much you can lean the bike over. Yeah, see, so when I upshifted and rolled off the throttle just now, it didn't hit me with a whole lot of engine braking and slow me way down, even though I was just off throttle, which is nice, because sometimes that's annoying. Sometimes you just kind of want to get up into a higher speed, get into a gear, and not have to deal with that whole engine braking throwing you around. This bike feels nice. This bike feels real nice. Another Harley. Welcome everybody to traffic. If anything, my issue with a bike this small would be in situations like this where you're probably not going to be seen. Now, most people aren't looking for motorcycles to begin with, but you're probably not going to be seen on a bike this small. Yes, it does have a very nice bright LED headlight, but you're not going to get the most out of that on a day like today. The sun's behind us. Most people aren't looking in the mirrors for motorcycles. You're going to get a lot of glare anyway because the sun's behind us at this time of day. People are probably on their phones. It is what it is, but that's why you really got to be confident in your riding and know what you've got going on around you. A little bit of lugging, 2,000 RPM. What is that? What is that? I don't know, but it's another SC Project. I don't even know if you guys can hear me right now because that thing's fairly loud, but another kind of upright style bike. It's a Yamaha, not sure what the engine size is. Sounds nice. I know it's a nice day, but at least put a jacket on. Shit. Share the lane. Share the lane. He doesn't see me. See? You see? Oh man, I don't know if you guys can pick up on that on the GoPro, but he just was looking down and then saw brake lights and grabbed a whole bunch of front brake, and the bike did one of those, and you won't get that out of this bike. I'm sure you will under certain circumstances. I can't predict everything, but I don't even know if you guys can hear me right now. Man, that's annoying. What size is that thing? I don't know. It's annoying. I'm over it. Shifter is nice. This next gen of Gear Shift Assist Pro, BMW calls it. Like I said, the 2015 BMW Gear Shift Assist Pro, wasn't a huge fan, but it was an upgrade from the first gen. The S1000XR first gen wasn't great, but it was decent. You know, didn't really have any complaints about it at the time, but the new XR is better. I wasn't a huge fan of the R1200 GS Gear Shift Assist Pro. Seemed a little bit too clunky. So BMW's learning as they go and putting the R&D and the engineering from the feedback that they're getting back into the bike. So this feels really good. This bike seems to be really happy on like third gear. Just worried that I'm so small. I feel so small on this bike. I can't even see the front wheel. Not that you can in most motorcycles, but it's like, it's a naked bike. Where's the front wheel? Oh, there it is. You know, I was honestly worried that this bike wouldn't have enough power. I don't think any bike that BMW makes at this point doesn't have enough power, but I was a little bit worried that this wouldn't, you know, coming from my 1250 that I rode this morning. Oh, riding my 1250 this morning, and then, you know, hopping on this, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be under power, it's gonna be small. I definitely did, you know, I was talking to my manager because he's ridden the F900 before I did, and he didn't, you know, really have that many thrilling things to say about it, but also he was just coming off of the S1000XR as well, and if you haven't ridden one of those yet, ride one and you'll see what we mean. That bike is phenomenal. So anything less, it's like, oh man. And I kind of did walk into this bike thinking the same thing, feeling the same way, like 900, yeah, it's a BMW, quick shift, all this stuff. It's supposed to be good, but am I really gonna enjoy it? Especially on the highway, especially for how far I have to ride. So far, the thing's great. This thing is, I like it. Nothing hurts yet. Butt doesn't hurt, knees don't hurt, feet don't hurt, chest doesn't hurt. Why would your chest hurt? Well, on a naked bike, there's going to be a lot more muscles going into work keeping you stable because of all the wind that is pushing you back. If you can think about just, you know, that immense force that's pushing you back as you increase speed and the wind pressure on your chest, you're going to have a lot of muscles start working harder to kind of keep you where you want on the bike. And so far I'm fine. I have no aches, no pains. Again, that's why I like to spend an overnight with the bike, because if I wake up in the morning all beat up, it's like, oh, there it is. Yeah, the throttle's nice. I feel like I have a little bit too much throttle travel for engine response in the road mode, so I'm going to switch it over to dynamic. All you got to do is press this button, going from road to dynamic, pull the clutch in to confirm. Now we are in dynamic mode, and you can definitely feel it got sharper. Wow, this is nice. This feels really good. I'm impressed. And you know what? Man, I was a little bit of a hater, not gonna lie. I was a little bit of a hater on this bike. I was not that excited to ride it. But now I kind of want to ride the 900XR. Oh, I love that this thing doesn't throw you off the bike under engine braking. Yeah, I'm a little, I haven't ridden the F900XR. I know I'll have to eventually, and that was kind of like my mindset. I'll get around to riding it. Same way I thought about this. I actually was waiting for a bike to come into inventory that would have the premium tech package. This just has the premium package. The only difference that the premium tech package has over this is it has an alarm, which can be added to almost any bike at this point, especially if it has keyless ride. Adaptive headlights, which means it's going to do all sorts of fancy things with the headlight beam as you turn and lean, and the dynamic ESA, which is the adjustable suspension.
which I have on my R1250 GS, and I really like it. So I kind of felt like this bike wasn't fully loaded, but minus the suspension. Headlight I don't really care about. For most people, headlight is one of the first things that upgraded anyway, and you don't need to upgrade it on this bike. Like I said, it's already got a very nice LED headlight. Maybe throw some fog lights on it, tiny little windshield, whatever makes you happy. But this is a contender. This is a contender for purchase. You're looking at this, maybe like a MT-09. You know, we're in that wheelhouse. Not really sure what those go for. I think they're around 10 grand. But kind of same style of bike. And I keep looking around. This always happens to me when I ride a new bike. I keep looking around because I feel like somebody's riding with me when I hop on a new bike and I'm not exactly used to the exhaust note. And I like that because it means that it's there for a stock bike. And I am getting this really nice growl. Woo! My bike, if I did a pull like that, as soon as you roll off, not horrible, but you know, you definitely kind of, you feel it. This is nice. Super nimble, super nimble. And you know what, at these higher speeds, not that we're going very fast, what, 65 miles an hour, but at highway speeds, the stiffness in the suspension makes more sense. The bike feels really planted. It's not doing a lot of wandering. I'm not really wondering what the front or the rear wheel is doing. So the stiffer suspension, at least if you're on a nicer road, you're gonna appreciate it. Those bumps and those roads that aren't so perfect, you're gonna kind of be annoyed. I already was a handful of times, but I do like the way the suspension feels. I don't think anybody needs more power than this. I say that a lot, and I say that on bikes that have a lot of different horsepower ratings, like the XR. I'll buy 160 horsepower. I want to say this is right around 100, maybe a little bit more. But why would you need more horsepower? I think it's everything that comes together. Suspension, braking, how does the whole bike feel overall will kind of help determine how much horsepower you need. You know, a lot of Harley guys like to call me up and when they want to do their trade-ins, which I'm able to trade them in because Harley owners just want way too much for their bikes. They're like, whoa, I got stage 2 Screaming Eagle, cam this, cam that. I'm like, why buy a bike that you need to get more power out of? I'm also kind of the same way with cars, but with bikes, it's like, I don't want to buy a bike and have to do stuff to it other than accessories, other than personalization and exhaust, this and the third, but I don't want to have to tear apart the motor on a brand new bike. And I always feel that BMW gets it right with how much horsepower is advertised and how much horsepower you need on a motorcycle. And I don't need any more than this. This is perfect. Definitely gets in and out of its own way. You know, let me close this visor. I have been thinking about, or at least talking to some people about owning a second bike. And a lot of times my clients are, you know, talking to me about the same thing. You know, well, should I add this to my lineup, or, you know, XYZ, or I have this, you know, I want to get this. And I try and always say throughout the conversation, while I pick the customer's brain and try and, I always try and say, while I'm having the conversation with the client and I'm picking their brain, you know, you don't want two bikes that are going to step on each other's toes. You know, you don't want a bike that's really meant to do the same thing. You don't want two bikes that are meant to do the same thing, because then, well, one's never going to get used. So, you know, having multiple touring bikes or multiple adventure bikes, you know, that might not make this much sense. But in my opinion, you know, having a GS, an adventure tour, an off-road tour, touring bike, whatever you want to call it, a big bike, let's just label it that, this would be a very nice addition. You know, I did have, like I've, you know, mentioned before, an S1000RR, and for the most part I've always been a one bike guy. That's why my S1000RR did track days, it did road trips, it did commuting, it, you know, did anything I asked it to do, and it was very good at it. And I look at this and I think, well, this would be a great second bike, because me personally, I'm not going to tour on it. I have my GS for that. I'm not going to go off-road on it. I have my GS for that. But if I wanted something smaller, if I wanted something nimble, if I wanted a sports bike, And whether it's the 900 or not, I have asked myself the question, because after riding the S1000 XR, and obviously I've ridden the S1000 RR, I haven't done a video on that yet, but I will. It's like, well, what bike would I get if I were gonna get a second bike? You know, what bike's not gonna step on the toes of the GS? And, you know, I don't want to walk to the garage and say, which one? Although if you have that problem, that's a good problem to have. I'm more thinking, after the XR, what is the new S1000R going to be like? I don't have any information on that. I don't know when it's coming, but obviously the S1000R hasn't been updated yet. It hasn't been refreshed to the new engine and new frame that the S1000XR and the S1000RR are currently on. And I look at that and I really think if it's as good or better than this, the S1000R, it might be a bike that gets me back onto a sports bike, because let's face facts. If it is an S1000, if it starts with an S, it's a sport bike as far as BMW is concerned. So would I get an S1000R? I absolutely would, but would I get it over a RR? That's the question. That's the question. But now riding this bike and seeing how versatile and easy to ride it can be, it's not intimidating. Yes, I have a decent amount of experience on motorcycles at this point, but it's not super intimidating. When I look at the S1000R and say, you know, that's enough sport bike for me. I know a lot of guys want to go full-blown sport bike, Panigale, V4, S1000RR, Gixxer, Yamaha R1, but there are a lot of naked bikes. There are a lot of bikes with handlebars that do great jobs at being sport bikes, as well as being comfortable, as being commuters, as being everyday bikes. And I feel both of those aspects from this bike. I feel that my knees are high and my body position is right. I feel that the bar reach isn't terrible. I feel that the bike is very in control. I feel like it's got plenty of power. I feel like I could do some sport bike things on this bike, while also being able to do probably a lot more. It's a lot easier to spend all day on a bike, hours on a bike at a time, when you're not super crunched over and your back starts hurting because, you know, you're on the sport bike with clip-ons. And a lot of times people have a hard time finding that bridge. They have a hard time figuring out they want to be on a naked bike or a cruiser. A lot of times guys get off the sport bikes and go straight to a cruiser, because in their head that's the only option. Well, I'm on a sport bike, I'm gonna ride. I gotta get a cruiser. I gotta get something crazy. And that's not true. I feel like naked bikes over the past couple of years, the Tuono is super popular. The S1000R is super popular. The MT10 is super popular. The Z1000 Kawasaki is super popular. And those are sport bike rooted bikes without that full fairing, without the clip-ons. And when I look at this bike, and now that I'm riding this bike, I'm like, wow, okay, I could totally see myself on a naked sport bike. And essentially that's what this is. I mean, this thing feels great. Doing about 76 on the highway, definitely not nearly as much wind coverage as my GS, but I'd be a fool to think that there would be, because there's nothing in front of it. And I'm not beat up. Now, let's say if this is a couple hours down the road, will I be? Maybe. But right now, initial impressions is what we're going for. Bike feels great. Let's do some riding. It's a very fast-looking Subaru. Again, why do guys put so much brake on such little cars? What is that thing got, like 200 horsepower? Why is there a spoiler? What kind of downforce do you need? I don't know, whatever. Definitely windy. What do you expect? You got no wind coverage. On a nice 77-degree day, according to the TFT, that might not be such a big deal, but, you know, what about those days where this wind is a lot colder? What about those days where it's raining? You know, all that stuff should go into account when you're picking a bike to purchase, especially if you're going to use it all the time. As a second bike, this thing is a contender. As a first bike, this thing is a contender. Please don't get me wrong. Get that body position going. I wanted to get off the highway only because I feel like this bike
and not necessarily this bike, but the style of bike that it isn't necessarily, I don't want to say suited. I'm maybe having a hard time finding the word, but all of that wind that you're getting hit with, it, I don't want to say takes a toll on you, but you definitely feel it on a naked bike. So will you be spending that much time on the highway? Depending on the speed, are you used to it? Is that just something that you're accustomed to? Because I know if you're used to riding naked bikes, it's something that it's just part of your forte. If you're used to riding adventure bikes, it's something that isn't part of your forte, and XYZ. But around town, this bike feels much better. Slower speeds, it feels much better just because the wind isn't there, and that's not the bike's fault. I mean, it isn't, but really you picked it. So I've been having this this thought in my head for the past couple minutes that I'm very curious to, same way I felt about riding this bike, the 900. And I've also been very hesitant to ride the F900XR, and I think that that's going to be the next bike that I ride, because this bike has surprised me. This bike has pleasantly surprised me. So if the F900XR can pleasantly surprise me while adding certain things like some height, probably some leg room, and obviously some wind coverage, that bike may be more of a contender than I thought. Maybe not for my personal purchase, but I know a lot of people have been inquiring about it. And with the bike being so new, and especially with the state of the world right now, not being able to walk into a dealership and throw a leg over it, it's a bike that I'm very curious to ride now. I'm very interested in seeing how that bike rides in comparison to this one, and kind of overall, because this one, I gotta be honest, this F900R has surprised the heck out of me. I'm blown away, to be honest. I love the way it rides. So far, really the only gripes is the suspension is fairly stiff, and there's plenty of ways around that. You can also spend a little bit more money, get the premium tech package. Like I said, this bike just has the premium package, but if you get the premium tech package, that will come with dynamic ESA, which allows you to adjust the dampening, and it may not be as stiff all the time. The seat so far needs to be a little bit broken in, and I never really like harping on things like, oh, the seat's so stiff, or you can always bolt on another seat. If you don't like the seat, buy another seat. BMW sells comfort seats, high seats, low seats, this seat, that seat. So if you don't like the seat, do something about it. If you don't like the foot pegs, do something about it. But as a sport bike, and this is what I'm going to call this bike, is as a sport bike, it feels great. As a sport bike, it feels great. It feels like a sports bike. So if you want to get something maybe more in between, or something with this type of character, but more wind protection, more height, and I'm not even going to say luggage, because this bike comes with luggage racks. The XR, the F900XR might be the way to go. So I'm curious now. I really want to ride that bike. I wanted to get off the highway, like I said, and just kind of put this bike in its element, this around town, this commuter, this the stop and go kind of environment where you're gonna kind of feel that the bike is a little bit better suited at stuff like this. And yeah, so far so good. Let's do some auto blipping. 3, 2, 1. Flawless victory. Where am I? This is probably gonna sound really good with an exhaust. You get a really nice engine note. I've noticed that in the F850 with the firing order and the way they have the crank set up, you get a really nice grumble from that bike. From this bike, you get a nice grumble. So I think with the right exhaust, or just leave it stock, it sounds great. You're gonna get some nice audio feedback from this thing. Plenty nimble.
man, these brakes are great. You know, a lot of times it's funny because in a couple other videos that I did, some people commented, oh, you didn't mention anything about the brakes, you didn't mention anything about that. Cool, whatever. I really sometimes forget how good brakes are on BMWs, and maybe that is a very big question, a very important question for people, or a topic to talk about, because if you're coming from a bike with subpar brakes, if you're coming from a bike that doesn't have Brembos, if you're coming from a bike that you're not completely satisfied with its braking capabilities, let's say that's one of the main reasons why you're looking into getting a new bike, is I want a bike with more brakes, I want a bike with better brakes. I'm sorry that sometimes I forget it. It's because it's so good, it's not even a question. If there's ever anything bad to say, it's easier to say it. Good things sometimes fall in the wayside because it feels so good, it's in the background, it feels so good, I don't even think about it. But these brakes, for a little bike, these brakes feel very good. And you know what? BMWs have had great brakes, whether the partnership with Brembo or in their own brakes in the recent bikes with Hayes. I love the brakes on my GS and other bikes that I have ridden with the Hayes brakes, like the S1000RRs, like the R12Rs and the, nope, those are Brembos. Just in general, I feel that BMW and their cars and their bikes pay attention to braking capabilities, and it's not all about giving you the strongest brake in the world. It's about feedback. It's about how the brakes feel initially. It's about how the brakes feel under heavy braking. It's about trail braking. It's about feedback, overall feedback, not just having the biggest brakes in the world, the strongest brakes in the world. And I think these brakes feel great, front and rear. Yep, that's all rear brake, ABS, obviously front and rear, so you're not gonna, I never get on a BMW nowadays and even worry about locking up. I don't even get on a bike in general, as long as it's a BMW, and worry about locking up. I am totally confident in the bike's capabilities when it comes to braking, knowing that if I need a panic stop, knowing that if I go in too deep, I'll be able to regulate my brake pressure and figure out my line through that corner. Braking is not something that I worry about anymore on BMWs. The electronics that back them as well, with the lean angle ABS, or what we call ABS Pro, flawless. And this thing also having dynamic traction control, you know, you can really, it's hard to get yourself into a bad situation on a BMW. You have wheelie control, you have ABS front and rear, you have all these things that are here to help you keep the bike upright. So I never really worry about getting on the throttle too hard either and popping the front wheel up unless I want to. And you can obviously go and turn things like that off with the ABS and traction control switch, like so. Traction control's on. And I'm just not worried about things like that. I let them work in the background and I ride the bike how I want to ride the bike. Hard, soft, fast, slow. It's hard to find a bike that is in BMW's lineup that does a bad job. But like I say, I'm biased, you know, and I tell my boss all the time, but this is a premium product and BMW knows what they're doing. So there's a level of expectation when you do walk into a motor rod dealership, and there's also a level of expectation when you do ride this bike. It has to do the things that you ask it to do. And what I find crazy is in a lot of circumstances when I ride trade-ins, even if it's just moving it around, it's like, wow, somebody rode this thing and paid for this thing and enjoys riding it, or enjoyed riding it up until the point where I convinced them a BMW would be a better move. But BMW's got it right, at least in my opinion. And if you either agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. If you want some more information out of my next video, if you think I missed something, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me either through YouTube. I can always give you some contact information, things like that. But so far, the F900 gets a pass out of me. Passing grade, A+. On that note, thanks for riding with me. I will see you guys tomorrow on the ride in. I'm gonna sleep on it, I'm gonna ponder it, I'm probably gonna crack a beer and stare at the thing for a while and see how I like. And again, if you don't like the wheels, that's on you. I love silver wheels. I think they look great. So until next time.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. We are in Manhattan, or at least once we get to the other side of this bridge we will be. And yeah, I spent some time on the F900R at this point, and I wanted to just go over a couple pros and cons that I listed in my head. Nothing major in my eyes, and just, I'd say, characteristics of the bike and things that can be messed with. But let's start with the cons. And this may not even really be a con if you kind of know what you're getting into. But the rear sets are fairly high, so your legs are pretty up there. I got a couple hot spots in my feet riding in this morning and out last night, just from the pressure that you're gonna put on the balls of your feet, because the rear sets are so high and you get that tighter angle in your knee. The bike is awesome handling wise, so I wouldn't really say it's a bad thing, but you know, it's a small bike. Even, you know, when I walked out to it this morning and used to seeing my GS, I looked at this thing and I'm like, wow, it's tiny. So yeah, not a whole lot of room to really put your legs and extend rear sets, at least, you know, on the factory design. So there's that. I'd also say the seat probably could use some more breaking in, but it's pretty stiff and my butt went a little numb at some points on the ride. But again, you can replace that. There's aftermarket seats. There's way to make a seat more comfortable. The mirrors, I would like a little bit more mirror, but I think notoriously factory mirrors are bad only because they can't accommodate everybody. Say some of the pros of this bike are the sound is amazing. I think that this engine sounds really nice. I think with an exhaust on it, it's going to sound even better. I think that the bike overall is a winner. I really, you know, wanted or tried to find things that were not so good about it. I know when I originally planned on riding, I was like, oh man, F900R, what is this? You know, but I'm pleasantly surprised. I think the best person or the easiest person to adapt to this bike is going to be somebody who's ridden sport bikes. This might be a little tough if you've never had a naked. This might be a little tough if you've never had a sport bike. But coming from a sport bike, coming from this type of seating position, because it really just feels like, yeah, see, this is why you ride a motorcycle in the streets. People just don't pay attention. That might sound counterproductive, but whatever. Yeah, if you're coming from a sport bike, I know one of my buddies had a 636 and he's really considering picking up one of these, or rather a ZX6R, and he's really considering picking up one of these. Shout out to Ryan. But I think if you've come from a sport bike, if you had a sport bike before, this bike's going to be very easy to ride. A lot of the things that you're already used to, like high foot peg position, high rear set position, stiff seats, a lot of that stuff is going to be normal for you. And then you really just have to adapt to the naked aspect of it and the handlebar aspect of it. I think that I think the bike overall is a winner. It really, really opened up my eyes. That one thing that I did notice just riding out, riding in, is the suspension is stiff, and there is a little preload knob under your butt over here on the right side, and I did mess with it a little bit. It didn't make anything night and day. It did soften up certain aspects of it. But if I were in the market for an F900R, I would probably spring for the premium tech package and get the dynamic ESA, and I know the benefits of it. A lot of people don't like electronic suspension or electronically damped suspension. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just do it myself. I like, you know, standard style suspension. I like rudimentary to suspension, and that's fine. But I think in today's day and age, especially with what manufacturers ask for their bikes price-wise, especially what BMW asks for their bike price-wise, I think you might as well spring and put a little faith in it and go for
their electronically damped suspension. It's a very good system. I think on a bike like this, it would probably make riding it long term a lot easier. Either that, or just, you know, walk into it knowing that you're gonna want to do some either adjustments or aftermarket cartridges or something like that, because I do think that the suspension is fairly stiff, especially, you know, if you're gonna spend an hour on it in the commute, an hour plus on it in the commute. Maybe add that with a softer seat, tiny little fly windscreen. You really can't ask for much, but I think that would be it. So handful of pros, handful of cons. You know, we're just talking about initial impressions here. It's not a long-term review, but I do like the bike. I do endorse the bike. I think that if you have the ability to ride one, or if you've been considering one versus, you know, another bike in this class, like I mentioned, MT10s, Z1000s, even what, the MT09s, just a naked sport bike. If you were considering something, consider the BMW. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. And other than that, thank you for riding with me. Until next time, let's get to work now. As if this isn't work. Nobody thinks this is work. This is work. It's work riding a motorcycle, especially in Manhattan with all these crazies. Oh yeah, one other thing that I was thinking about, because I have my backpack on, because there's no luggage on this bike, even though you can add luggage. I would either spring for the luggage, or maybe get a cargo net for the rear, because with the my backpack's fairly heavy today. I brought a lot of stuff with me, so with the addition of some weight, the stiff suspension, and all this wind that hits you on a naked bike, you really feel it. You really feel that extra weight. You feel the wind kind of tossing you around. You feel the wind pressing back on you. Again, I'm not saying that's a major con of the bike, because it's a naked bike. You know what you're walking into. That's like buying a convertible and saying, well, my hair gets messed up every time I drive it. Well, you signed up for this. So I'm not gonna say that's a horrible thing. Yeah, just be aware. It's a naked bike. Maybe I'm just harping on that a little bit because I haven't ridden a naked bike in a while, even though I'm a huge fan of the S1000R. Yeah, naked bikes take a toll on you. Oh, you dropped your bag, buddy. You got it? You got it? Yeah, there you go. Oh, I love this noise. I like the way this thing sounds. You even get this nice intake snorkel noise. You can see the two intakes right here that feed air into the airbox, and then it goes into the engine. And when you really get on the throttle and you load it up and it's really sucking extra air in versus just that ram air effect, you get a really nice deep air intake noise. But that's the thing about naked bikes, is you're exposed to all of the noises. Oh yeah, and I would definitely get rid of this fender. This fender is huge. This rear tail light, I mean, that's huge. Definitely you gotta find an integrated job for this thing, because then it wouldn't make the bike nice and short. I like when you have those short tails and you don't have all this extra just random body work making the bike look super long. I would get rid of these luggage racks if I weren't using them. Tighten up the tail, clean it up with a integrated tail light or a tail tidy. Drop a SC Project on this bad boy for some extra noise. Man, this thing's gonna probably sound wild with an exhaust like that. That's about it. Other than that, I don't really see any major necessary upgrades. You know, a seat, but maybe you have a little bit more padding back there than I do in the butt area, so maybe it won't be so bad for you. But like I said, these are just my initial impressions. Around about 100 or so miles on the bike. Got to deal with some traffic. It filters extremely easily. It lane splits so easily. It's so much more narrow than my GS. So I guess the overall question is, could you ride this bike every day? Could you ride this bike every day? I think I could. I think there's going to be days where it's going to be a little bit more stressful than others. Rain, cold, things like that. But you know, that's where gear comes in. Proper jacket will help with the wind. Proper helmet will help with the wind. Maybe a small fly screen will help with the wind. But could I ride this every day? Yes. I think I could. I think this would be an excellent second bike to a big bike like the GS or an S1000XR or even a double R. You know, I think this would be a great second bike or a great commuter bike. But if I had to pick one bike, could I do one bike things with this one bike? I could. I do like the way this sounds. You don't really get this this off balance firing order from BMW motorcycles. It's more of an Italian thing, V4s and L twins and that stuff, Tuonos and whatever. But this sounds nice. It's got a nice little growl to it. I can only imagine what happens when you open up this exhaust. Well, signing off, signing out. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Hopefully there's another video coming up right behind this. I've got a couple more bikes to ride, and if there's something you'd like to specifically know about this or any of the other bikes I ride, or another bike you would like me to ride, just let me know. Thanks for watching.